Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Colonel Frank Colley. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. And during this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute To Corporal Charles Oscar Zander. Charles Zander was born on the 11th of October, 1885, to Gustav and Anna Zander of Vitika. His village was at the time Vilna in Russia, but is now Vilnius, the capital city of Lithuania. His mother died when he was a small boy, and he was raised by his grandmother. By the time he was 16, however, he was left quite alone in the world. At that point, Zander chose a life at sea, travelling to England to learn navigation. After many years of being based in London, Zander became a naturalised British citizen on the 16th of January 1911. He then came to Australia, continuing his work as a mariner based in Port Adelaide. There he was reported to have enjoyed the esteem of a large circle of friends. Charles Zander enlisted for service in the Australian Imperial Force shortly after the outbreak of war in August 1914. He was posted to the 10th Battalion, and after a brief period of training, he left with the 1st Contingent for active service overseas. Private Zander was first sent to Egypt, where he continued his training before being sent to Gallipoli. In the early hours of the 25th of April 1915, men of the 10th Battalion rowed silently towards the Turkish shore at what would become known as Anzac Cove. The war diary of the battalion records that no sound was heard except the splash of oars. We thought that our landing was to be effected quite unopposed. But when our boats were within 30 yards of the beach, a rifle was fired from the hill in front of us, above the beach, right in front of where we were heading for. Almost immediately, heavy rifle and machine gun fire opened up on us. The men finished rowing to shore and dashed for the heights above the beach. Private Zander remained with the 10th Battalion on the Gallipoli Peninsula throughout the campaign, surviving the landing and months of sniper and artillery fire. He was evacuated with the remainder of his battalion towards the end of 1915 and returned to Egypt, where he underwent medical treatment for an ongoing problem. In March 1916, the 10th Battalion sailed for France and the Western Front. In June, Zander was granted 7 days' leave in the United Kingdom. During this time, he met up with an old friend from his earlier days in London, a woman named Ethel Horn. She was widowed and had 2 small children, and during his leave, the two married. They had very little time together before he returned to France. Shortly after Zander returned to his battalion, it took part in the first major offensive conducted by 1st Anzac Corps on the Western Front when it attacked and captured the village of Pozières. The battalion was relieved after several days of heavy fighting, and again Zander came through unscathed. In August, he was promoted to corporal, and shortly afterwards returned to the trenches in Pozières. He was then to take part in another attack on the German positions opposite. On the 19th of August 1916, the 10th Battalion took part in an attack that was launched in the early evening. Over the following days, the men of the battalion slogged their way forward and established a tenuous position under extremely heavy shell fire. The attack captured at most a few feet of territory at a very heavy cost. One of those killed was Corporal Charles Zander. Little is known of the manner of his death, and his body was never recovered from the shell-torn battlefield. Today, the Russian-born British subject is commemorated as an Australian soldier at the Australian Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux. He was 30 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal Charles Oscar Zander, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.